Okay, so now I'm going to go through the answers to this quiz. You'll be able to find the quiz by noting the date. And this will be a good practice for you to go through before you take the Chapter 3 quizzes. All right, so this first question is the following. The exhibit shows how supply and demand might shift in response to specific events. Like here's the event. Suppose the price of lumber falls dramatically. Which panel best describes how this will affect the market for houses? So there's two things to note here. One is, what market are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the market for houses. But what happens in the world? That is, the price of lumber falls. So I would say for these types of questions, you should first determine two things. First, is demand or supply affected? And then second, does affected curve increase or decrease? So if you can focus on these two questions, you'll be able to answer this one. And so let me suggest also that you draw demand and supply curves while you're working through these problems. So for example, here we have the market for housing, the quantity of housing here, and the price of housing here. And we start out with demand and supply. Demand slopes downward, and then supply is the other curve. Now, did you determine that this change in the price of lumber affects consumers or producers? In other words, demand and supply. You should have determined that it affects supply, right? Why? Because lumber is an input into making houses. In other words, lumber is a factor of production. And so a change in a factor of production affects supply. Is it going to increase supply or decrease supply? Another way to think about that is it going to make building houses easier, which would increase supply, or more difficult, which would decrease supply? And everybody knows that if lumber is cheaper, it makes building houses easier, and so that supply will increase. So we go from S to S prime. That is an increase in supply. And therefore, which is the right answer? So the answer, the first one is C. Number 2, same type of question. Suppose half the people in San Diego move to Colorado Springs. What will happen to the market for houses in Colorado Springs? So again, we're talking about the market for houses. And is this mass migration of people from San Diego to Colorado Springs going to affect demand or supply? It seems like it's going to affect demand mainly. And is it going to increase demand or decrease demand? It'll increase demand. And so what you can do is draw yourself a graph, label the curves. It's good practice. And then you show demand increasing from D to D prime. And now which of the curves up here does this look like? The answer is B. Looks like that one there. One thing I might say about this second problem is that some of these people from San Diego know how to build houses, don't they? And when they get to Colorado Springs, they might actually start construction companies, or they might enter the construction industry, right? And so then what might you say? When there's a big increase of people in Colorado Springs, not only does demand increase, but supply might also increase. And so we might say this scenario would be more accurately reflected with two curves shifting simultaneously. That might be true. However, we're not given that as an option, right? And so let me just remind you, here are the options. Let me remind you how to take a multiple choice exam, because you're going to be taking them a lot in this course, online quizzes and also for your midterm and final. You need to select the single best option, all right? So the single best option here would be demand increasing. Okay, what about number 3? The price of eggs might go up because if there's an increase in the price of bacon, what will happen in the market for eggs? Let me again draw this market for eggs. So we have the quantity of eggs, and we have the price of eggs, demand, and supply. Okay, so if there's an increase in the price of bacon, what's going to happen? Is demand or supply going to be affected? Demand. And how will it be affected? It will decrease. Why? Because people go to the restaurant and they're like, I want bacon and eggs. But now they see that bacon is more expensive, so they're not going to buy bacon, and therefore, if they don't have bacon, they don't want eggs either. So the demand would decrease, right? And then what would happen to the equilibrium price of eggs? Would fall. So no, that would not cause, A is not the right answer. What about the price of chicken feed? Would that affect demand or supply? Supply. And would it cause supply to increase or decrease? If the price of chicken feed increases, good. Supply will decrease. It makes producing producing eggs more difficult, right? And then the price goes up. That looks like it might be the right answer. So this is the right answer. It's not a bad idea to check the other answers. The supply of eggs increased. So supply goes from here to here. What happens to the price? Falls. Demand for eggs fell. Demand goes from here to here. What happens to the price? Falls. So good. So B is the right answer. Yeah?
Demand should be different if the price of eggs might go up if the because wasn't there. Like right now we're saying if the chicken feed price increases, then the price goes up for eggs. What if it was the other way around?
I'm not sure I understand the question. So
If the demand for eggs fell because the price of eggs might go up, right? It could be the other way.
Good question. So you're asking if the price of eggs went up, could that cause the demand for eggs to fall? I'm glad you asked that question because it is a type of error that students always make at this early stage of the course. There are many, many things in this world that can cause the demand for eggs to fall. But there's one thing that cannot cause the demand for eggs to fall: a change in the price of eggs. Why? Because a change in the price of eggs, so for example, an increase in the price of eggs will cause quantity demanded to fall. So thank you for asking that question. Okay, question 4. A market shortage occurs if the, again, I would recommend drawing a graph here. So we don't need to just say, we could say this is the market for eggs or whatever. It doesn't matter because this model holds for all markets. Okay, if the price is above the equilibrium, that means we have a situation like this, right? And then here, do we have a shortage or a surplus? We have a surplus. Why? Because the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded. So we have a surplus. So A is not correct. What about B? Price is equal to the equilibrium price. No, that should be obviously wrong. If we're here at the equilibrium, quantity demanded equals quantity supplied, and there's no shortage or surplus. What about C? Equilibrium price is above the market price. This is another way of saying, I think I have to redraw this. So we're considering now the answer in part C. If the equilibrium price is above the market price, what does that mean? The equilibrium price is above the market price. So this is the market price. There we have, what's this called? Quantity demanded. If we labeled this demand, that would be easier for us to say. And this is quantity supplied. So is that a surplus or a shortage? Shortage. So C is the right answer. Question 5. At a price of $25 per unit will result in what? Well, we see that the quantity supplied is 250, quantity demanded is 50, and so there's going to be a surplus of 200 units. So 5 is B. What about 6? An increase in buyer's income, assuming videotape rentals are a normal good. Now, do you know what videotape rentals were?
Yes.
Okay. So they used to have this thing in the old days where you would go and give them money, and then they would go find the DVD or rather a cassette tape on the shelf and then hand it to you. But luckily those days are gone. But anyway, if we're assuming videotape rentals are a normal good, that means that what? As income goes up, demand goes up as well, right? So an increase in buyer's income will cause demand to go up. So this should be pretty easy then, just by looking. I mean, you can draw your figure, demand and supply. We said demand's going to go up. And so which one does this look like? The answer is A. So we're talking about this right here, and we see that we're going from F to G, right? So we're going from point A to, sorry, I should call this point F and this point G. Question 7, the same figure, but now we have a decrease in buyer's income, and at the same time, a decrease in the wage rate paid to rental store employees. So let's draw our graph. So the first thing that happens is income goes down, right? So what's going to happen to the demand curve? It's going to fall from D to D prime. So demand falls. And then, at the same time, there's a decrease in the wage rate paid to video rental store employees. That's going to affect supply, right? And it's going to make it easier or more difficult to sell videotapes. The wage rate goes down. So it becomes easier now. You can hire more people. You can keep them working longer for the same amount of money, right? So it's easier to produce videotape rentals, and supply increases from S to S prime. And so initially we were here at the equilibrium of D and S, but then demand fell and also supply increased, so we went from there to there. Now, which of these situations does this look like? Has to be the third one, because it's the only one that has two simultaneous shifts, so that could be a huge clue for you anyway. But we can also just verify. Sometimes you'll have an option, none of the above here, so we can just verify that, yes, here supply is increasing, and here demand is decreasing, because we're going from D to D prime, you know that's a decrease, S to S prime, you know that's an increase. And the points should be J to M, and so let's just verify that J to M. So the answer to question 6 is 7, sorry, is D. Oh no, 7 is A. We're moving from J to M in figure C. Okay, question 8. If the current price is above the equilibrium price, we would expect, so let's draw our curve again. Here's the equilibrium price, but the current price is above it. So what would we expect? We would expect that the quantity supplied would be greater than the quantity demanded, not A, right? We would expect downward pressure on price, not upward pressure on price. We would expect C is the right answer. And we have 2 more to go here. So question 9 says, given the equilibrium after a change in supply from S1 to S2, that means we go from this equilibrium point to this equilibrium point. Which of the following is true? At the old price of $2.50, there will be pressure for the price to fall. Well, let's consider that. So at the old price of $2.50, if it stayed the same after the shift, what would happen? The quantity supplied would increase, right? The quantity supplied would be 500. The quantity demanded would be 300. And what's this called? Surplus. Whenever there's a surplus, there's downward pressure on price. So yes, A appears to be right. It's not a bad idea to go through the rest of them to make sure that there are no other good answers. The new price will be $2. Well, that's clearly wrong because the new price is $1.50, which is here. The new quantity will be 600. No, the new quantity will be 400. All of the above are true. No, these are not true, and so therefore this is not true. Okay, last question, question 10. If there were a decrease in supply by 100 at each price, the equilibrium price and quantity would be blank and blank respectively. So what does that mean? Okay, that means there's a decrease in supply of 100 units at each price. So this becomes 100, this becomes 120, this becomes 140, this becomes 150, 160, 180, and 200. And so we're looking for a price where quantity demanded and quantity supplied are equal. So 260 does not equal 100. 245 does not equal 120. Not equal, not equal. But here, we see that they're equal, right? At a price of $4, quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. And so the answer must be D.